thank you so much for joining the symposium today.
Can I just say as well, we're very pleased that Anwar Akhtar, that as I said, director of the Samosa, will join us as a guest speaker. And Anwar has actually led workshops with our students throughout the project on issues such as heritage, identity, language, empire, and faith.
We will hear from Anwar Akhtar, and he is the director of the Samosa in London, and who has been chairing a series of discussions and workshops with the students, including a captivating talk about the power of the English language and how this affects communication today. So some of the discussions during the project have explored identity, education, empire, trade, Commonwealth history, and including the collections of the Lahore Museum explored in the film made by Anwar, which is Pakistan's best kept secret Lahore Museum. And if you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend it. We watched it on the project. And other workshops have also explored different elements of the British island story, such as regional identity, class, history, empire, and the contribution of Britain's BAME communities to modern Britain. So today, Anwar will explore the relationship between Urdu, Punjabi, and English in Pakistan. So Anwar, would you like to say a few words? And I believe you would like me to share a map as well. So I will do that as you start speaking. Perfect.
Yeah. Thank you, Alice. Thank you. It is still good morning, so good morning, everyone. Before I start, I just want to say it's been a real pleasure to work with an extraordinarily bright group of young people at varying degrees of, so I know some are studying and some are working, but just, yeah, a wonderful group of people, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And well done, Porthcurno and Exeter University for pulling that partnership together. So I'm going to speak about Pakistan, specifically languages of Pakistan. And here we have a map. Wonderful. So the official state language of Pakistan, it's lingua franca alongside English, is Urdu. And Urdu as a language has very deep historic roots in South Asia. It's developed as a Persianized sister tongue of Hindi from about 6th century onwards. And it shares a common vocabulary-based syntax with Hindi. And so Urdu and Hindi are mutually intelligible in colloquial speech, but they share different alphabets. Sanskrit and Persian. And also the use of Urdu and Hindi today are deeply entwined with the identity politics and culture wars, if you like, between India and Pakistan following the 1947 partition. So if I just drill into the numbers around language. So the population of Pakistan is 225 million. I think the 6th most populated country on the planet. And so of a population of 225 million, 90% of the population of Pakistan don't speak Urdu as their first language, as their mother tongue. Their mother tongue, their language that they will grow up with in the family home, inherit from their parents, their indigenous language, if you like, will be Punjabi, Sindhi, Balochi, Pashtun, and then they will learn Urdu as a second language when they get into schooling. And so that raises a whole set of issues around regional cultural identity and social cohesion. And so, for instance, the largest ethnic group in Pakistan is Punjabi, and that's about 40% of the population. And I'm descended from Pakistani immigrants that came to Britain in the 60s. So their first language is Punjabi. The second most popular language in Pakistan is a very close tie between Pashtun and Sindhi, both about 22, 23 million speakers. And then Saraiki, which is actually a derivative of Punjabi, which is what my parents who came from Multan and Bahalpur speak. Okay, so I mean, that's it on numbers for now. I'm just making the point that there are lots of languages in Pakistan. I think there's 60 or 70 different languages, 7 or 8 that are most dominant, and Urdu is not the most popular language in terms of indigenous speakers, but it's the national language of Pakistan. Now, before getting into the issues around Urdu's culture and heritage, if you're teaching a language in schools that is not mother tongue language when children come into schools, that raises all sorts of issues around cognitive understanding, a student's ability to develop conceptual clarity and expression at an early age, future academic utility, a student's ability to learn academic subjects and unfamiliar languages, and a whole set of issues around development of confidence, self-esteem, parental involvement in a child's education. And I'll go into that a little bit more shortly, but let me just park here that Pakistan has one of the worst levels of adult literacy on the planet. I think barely 46-48% of women are literate compared to 70% of men, and that's very basic literacy. And there's all sorts of other educational problems in Pakistan. Before the pandemic, it was estimated that there were 22 million children not enrolled in school. Some think it's many more. Many of those are girls. There's difficult challenges around girls' education all across Pakistan, especially rural areas, because of all sorts of cultural traditions that are very, very difficult, to put it mildly. So just hold that thought. Imagine if you grow up in the UK speaking English in the family home, and then you get to school and everything is going to be taught to you in French. That's the point I'm making about, you know, language issues around language and second language and mother tongue. Now, why and how this has happened, there's many different reasons, but one of the things I want you to just think about as well is the impacts of partition on Pakistan around language and population growth and education. And if we just look at the story of Karachi, Pakistan's most populated city, in many ways its most important city strategically, culturally, economically, though not its capital now. Pakistan came into being in 1947, the partition of India. Karachi's population then was 500,000, 500,000 people or thereabouts. The vast majority of Karachi's population would have been Sindhi and Balochi speaking people. By 1951, within 4 years, the population of Karachi went from 500,000 to 1 million. Now, take a similar sized city in the UK, say Liverpool or Sheffield, two great cities I'm quite familiar with. Imagine if Liverpool or Sheffield's population doubled in 4 years. And it doubled with people whose first language wasn't English. And that's what happened in Karachi. The Urdu-speaking refugees, Muslim refugees from all over India, many came to Karachi. They're called Mahajers. Many of them were part of India's Muslim elite, incredibly entrepreneurial, incredibly talented. Many were poor and working class. And as they came to Karachi, their mother tongue, Urdu, then had a tension with Sindhi and Balochi. And many of the tensions in Karachi are around control between different communities of one of the most valuable port cities, trading cities, mercantile cities on the South Asian Gulf Coast. But just coming back to language and where language is in Pakistan, Karachi ended up not being the capital. A new capital was built in Islamabad, and primarily because of an attempt to have a Punjabi language dominance. And then language in Pakistan, I'm slightly stopping and thinking out loud because this goes in so many different directions around the challenges of Pakistan. So when Pakistan was created, the selection of Urdu was due to its association with South Asian Muslim nationalism, the incredible rich literary, cultural traditions of Urdu across poetry, across arts, its links with the Mughals and Persian culture, Persian Asian culture. So there's a huge, very rich, powerful Muslim cultural identity wrapped up in Urdu. And you can understand why Pakistan, as a South Asian Muslim nation, wanted a unifying national language, and one that promoted a sort of Muslim cultural excellence. So, I mean, that's understandable, but then you've got to think about, as Pakistan was created, there was East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, where the majority obviously spoke Bengali, and Urdu wasn't their natural mother tongue. And that explains a great deal of the awful events that led to the creation of Bangladesh in terms of the violence, with an attempt to impose Urdu on an entire people where it wasn't their mother tongue. Now, goodness me, there's so many issues here. So Article 251 of the Constitution of Pakistan declares that there can only be one official language at the national level, although in reality there's two, because English is spoken by all the business, academic, military elites. Eventually, the Constitution was amended to allow Punjabi provisional language, a provisional language status in the Punjab. Now that's half the population of Pakistan's mother tongue, being seen as a provincial language. In a way, as a Brit and having grown up looking at the experiences of Latin in European education being seen as a language of excellence, but not people's mother tongue and educational elites. That's a very crass comparison, but I think there are some similarities there. But it's just this idea that when you build a nation, you're building it around language and the relationship between that and mother tongue. And this also plays into issues around Afghanistan today. So Pashto is a very widely spoken language all across Pakistan. There's been great Pashtun migration into Karachi, huge community, Lahore, Islamabad. After Punjabi is perhaps the most dominant community in many ways in Pakistan. But their language, Pashtun, is not Urdu. There's also, I mean, Saraiki is a wonderful derivative of Punjabi, spoken in Multan and Bahalpur, which I'm extraordinarily fond of because that's my parents' mother tongue that I inherited speaking, and that's a very different language from Urdu as well. And it's spoken by about 20 million people. I mean, going back to Afghanistan and the Afghanistan border now, the Durand line, the 2,670 kilometer border between Afghanistan and Pakistan, originally established in 1893 by a chap called Mortimer Durand, another one of these intrepid British Victorian empire building explorers that left his mark on maps of the world and cartography. And the Durand line was originally a deal between the British controlling India and Abdur Rahman Khan, the Afghan Empire, to fix their respective spheres of influence. And it left half of the natural Pashtun homelands under British rule, half in Afghanistan. And of course, that then followed through with the creation of Pakistan. And it was all part of the great game of a buffer zone between British and Russian interests in the region. And so the Durand line was inherited by Pakistan in 1947 and is challenged by many people, particularly in Afghanistan. And again, that's about language and how language plays out. But let me just wrap up very quickly with a few things. It is a generally professionally accepted view that one of the biggest challenges in Pakistan is the failure to engage with mother tongue and literacy and education and mass education. That I see as a bigger challenge to Pakistan are sectarian violence, gender inequality, and poverty. But because of the very delicate fault lines around identity and national pride, people tread very cautiously. But there is a real willingness, I think, or wish to engage with the relationship between mother tongue and Urdu as the kind of South Asian Muslim language. I'll wrap up very quickly with, I've used reference to Pakistan a lot because it's such a large country and it's so culturally strategically important, and also its links to Britain. There's two views you can take on Pakistan, and I take one of the two views depending which day of the week you get me on and what mood I'm in. So one view is that it's a country that it's just an amazingly extraordinary achievement of the human spirit that it survived so long with so many tensions against it and with such conflict with India. So a brilliant, extraordinary achievement, resilience, amazing people, amazing culture, amazing belief. There's another view that it's creaking under the weight of its own contradictions and it risks becoming a failed state despite the brilliance of its people, its diaspora, and the vast culture it's inherited and it's part of. It's sometimes said that there's three things that unite Pakistan. I think I've pointed out that language isn't one of them by now. The three things that unite Pakistan are cricket, very important, religion, and animosity towards India. So, you could say three of the pillars. So if you take those three things, cricket is wonderful. Can you build a nation around it? I love cricket, so let me just park that issue there. Building nations around religion, Islam, and unity. Well, have a look at Northern Ireland and the European experience, and you can see the tensions there. And I think there does become a point where the Pakistani establishment should perhaps stop blaming India for everything, which is often a default setting. I'm going to stop by saying there's a new national school curriculum that's been launched, a great fanfare by Imran Khan. It seems to have ducked the biggest crisis or the biggest challenge around curriculum in education in Pakistan, which is a relationship between mother tongue, the working class communities of Pakistan, rote learning, Urdu, and literacy and economic educational marginalisation. Not the first time the Pakistani establishment have ducked a big challenge. Thank you.
Great, Anwar, thank you so much. So I think you've already touched on this, but if you wanted to expand on any of these questions. So regarding how language is used for nation building and the tensions this can lead to, are there examples in Europe that are similar to what you have discussed regarding Pakistan?
Yeah, I mean, as a Brit, I suppose the two obvious ones are the huge defensiveness of kind of choosing my words very carefully here because I don't, but the defensiveness in Belfast in Northern Ireland from very staunch loyalist Protestant communities at any intimation of Gaelic or Irish going into the curriculum. There's a fear there, isn't there? There's a fear of a Trojan horse that's going to lead to a united Ireland and affect. And I often think, the relationship between Northern Ireland and Ireland is a bit like the relationship between India and Pakistan or Scotland and England, perhaps. And I think the issue is that there is no doubt Urdu is incredibly important for Pakistan in terms of its cultural traditions, its literary traditions, its heritage, South Asian Muslim identity. But Urdu, for many people in Pakistan, is seen as an elite language of academics. It is the indigenous Muslim mother tongue of Delhi and parts of, and the indigenous mother tongue of Lahore, the other great kind of city of the Punjab, if you like, or Mughal city, is Punjabi. So so you can see why, and if you've just been created as a nation and you've got 4 or 5 provinces that are very, very different, Baluchistan, Punjab, Sindh, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, the awful conflicts with Bangladesh, you've got to have some unifying thing, something that holds the nation together. And so the two things are going to be religion and language. Now we see with religion all the strife between different communities, with language, what I didn't think they thought through the fact that if you're not teaching children's education in their mother tongue, but you're making them learn Urdu as a language of schools and a language of curriculum. I mean, imagine being Portuguese and getting to primary school. We'd say, right, it's all French now. Everything's French. That's the language of Europe. That's the kind of muddle that Pakistan's got into. But because there's so many religious sensitivities around it, it's very difficult to reform the curriculum in Pakistan. They urgently needs reform on this issue. It's not a niche subject. We're talking about 60, 70 million children, millions out of school, and the issues in that region. So yeah, it's that's what I wanted to drill into more.
Great. So thanks so much, Anna. That's really interesting. We've just had an anonymous question come in.
Oh, go for it.
So how do you see the relationship between language and social class in Pakistan? Is one's class or language more important in defining you, or are they inextricably linked?
Okay, so again, as a Brit that spent a lot of time in Pakistan, one of the things that really, it is a bit, I'm going to be really careful there because I don't want to get accused of Orientalism, but it does sometimes feel like you're walking through a Dickens novel, with the class divide. So there is an elite of Pakistan, and there's several elites. There's the economic elite, the cultural elite, the military elite, but there's a 10-15% of Pakistan's population that are very articulate in English. The wealthy will educate their kids in Harvard or Berkeley or Westminster or Oxbridge. Imran Khan's a great example of that. And it's a sort of elite rich tribe that effortlessly slip across borders and, five-star world. And then there's the kind of military establishment, which is a huge institution in Pakistan that is omnipresent in terms of the nation's structures. And again, and I think those elites will be very, very conversant in Urdu and English. But then the working classes that speak Sindhi, that speak Balochi, that speak Punjabi, you're dealing with, often large rural or peasant communities or large urban communities that are utterly disenfranchised. And the disconnect between the two is jaw-dropping compared to the experience I've had growing up in Britain of integration and representation and roots into, we have ways for everyone involved in this panel can in some way make a connection with, so every British person involved in this panel will have access to the British establishment via vice chancellors, universities, trustees of boards, politicians. That doesn't exist in Pakistan. So there's a disconnect between the elites and the mass population. And I think the language issue, and I think there is a language apartheid. If you don't speak Urdu or English, if you're speaking Punjabi or Sindhi or Balochi, you will be, you're lower down the cultural hierarchy.
Great, Anwar, thanks so much. That's so interesting. And
thank you.
Rutvi and Hannah explore that later in a film that they've.
I'm looking forward to
really
that.
Exciting. And so we have one more question come in from Stuart in the chat. So I'll just read that out for you if you wouldn't mind, Anwar. So it's would you see any parallels between Pakistan and the drive for Scottish independence?
No, I see parallels. I see lots of parallels between Pakistan and Israel. And I think that's a more helpful comparison. Both countries are the same age, born in 1947. Both came out of British mandates at the end of empire. Both have a narrative where there's a narrative of having been wronged and being disenfranchised in Pakistan with millions and millions of, well, tens of millions of people, my parents, my mother included, that were refugees that had to flee and were expelled from India. And there's a narrative of Israeli marginalization and people fleeing Europe. There's also a narrative of course, wanting to ignore the fact that many Hindus and Muslims had to flee Pakistan and go to India. So there's a narrative of only seeing one side of the dispossession and not the other. And I'm sure Palestinians will say the same thing. Both countries have got ridiculously loyal diasporas. My God, the Pakistani diaspora would give the Israeli, I mean, have a look at the cricket. have a look at the loyalty. I mean, it's often said that one of Pakistan's best assets is its diaspora, because it is just knee-jerk loyalty, knee-jerk, and understandable. It's its family, its heritage, its culture. Both are nuclear powers, both got massive military establishments, and both would say they're in difficult neighborhoods with issues to resolve. But I think, when you build a nation in the name of one minority or one community, immediately the question arises, what about all the other communities? And what about all the other minorities? And I think that's an issue in Pakistan. I think Scotland is, there's a bit of a comparison between, I think there's a English Scotland. I think there's India, Pakistan's a bit like England, Scotland. Yeah, I see that, in terms of, there was an idea that Pakistan was going to be federal, but there would always be that, link with India. And unfortunately, it hasn't quite worked out that way because of the horrors of partition. So yeah, let me stop there.
Great, Anwar, thank you so much. That's really interesting. And yeah, Charlotte has just mentioned saying that it's really interesting thinking about the importance of language with regards to identity and national pride. And she also draws on something that, Rutvi and Hannah will bring up later, which is the links between the telegraph and the spread of English as an area not much studied as yet. So last but not least, I'm very excited to introduce the final two students to share their work. So Hannah Reeves and Rutvi Narang. And Rutvi is based in India and is a recent graduate in chemical engineering from ITT Bombay. And Hannah is a recent graduate of modern languages from Exeter University and is about to embark on an MA, which I believe is in medieval studies. And they are both interested in language. And when searching through the PK archive database, we searched for the word linguistics and came across a map titled Linguistic Map of the World. And it was a Marconi code map showing the dominant languages used in telegraphy in the early 20th century. And this spurred their interest in language and communication, leading to a film titled India Then and Now, which explores communication between India and the UK and the power of the English language. And they have shown great perseverance in researching this topic, which was so broad. And they have done a brilliant job of bringing their ideas together and creating this wonderful film. So the film was produced, narrated, researched, and scripted by Hannah and Rutvi, and the video was by Luca Salvagno with music by Annabelle Hockey-Smith. So before I share the film, over to Hannah and Rutvi to introduce the film, please.
Thank you. I think Alice has mostly introduced us and the project, but I'll just give a brief overview before we start the film. So as she said, we were matched as a pair at the start of the project due to a shared interest in language and linguistics. And our main aim was sort of trying to find a link to language in the archive, which initially proved quite difficult, which could be kind of surprising because it's a museum about communication, but Anwar's lectures were very useful in giving us some focus and ideas and discussion of sort of thinking where we could take the project. As Alice said, our research initially took us by searching linguistics to the Marconi Map, which was something that particularly fascinated me. It's actually the advert for the symposium, so you may have seen the map already. And as she said, it's a map of the world which is color-coded to show the language most commonly used in wireless telegraphy in each country. So it's kind of a snapshot into the dominant language, certainly in kind of administration and communication in those countries, which is very interesting from the point of view of colonialism. So it's unsurprising, perhaps, but also interesting that the only languages on there are English, French, Spanish, German, Russian, Japanese, Portuguese, and Dutch. So there's a high level of correlation between the colonized nations and the language of the oppressors. yeah, I found this map really fascinating. I wrote a blog post about it that talked a bit about what I've mentioned, and also looked at the Marconi International Code, which was one of the codes used in wireless telegraphy. And these are in huge volumes stored in the archive, which show the code for each word and phrase, and it's the same in every language. But as Alice said, through kind of discussions, we decided for our main project we would like to focus on language in India and the spread of the English language related to calligraphy, as that's where Rutvi's from. And through our discussions together, I found it really interesting hearing her talk about the language situation in India, how English functions in different parts of society. So we decided to make a video about that and link it to the archive at Porthcurno. The link to telegraphy is that increased communications and faster links due to the telegraph system would have been a factor in the spread of English in the country. As I think Charlotte said, it's not something that's massively been researched and documented, so it was hard to find evidence explicitly for that link. But I think we can assume that that was significant, that communication and increased links did have an impact. So even though you can't really quantify it. In the video, I talk a bit about the history of telegraphy in India and the role of English, and Rutvi talks about the language landscape there today. And I'll hand over to her if she would like to add anything.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rutvi. I think what the project encapsulates has been sort of covered by both Alice and Hannah, who've done that brilliant job of just summarizing what we discussed in the video. I think, as Charlotte mentioned in her comment, I think the video would address this lack of research on this topic, and I think just our conversations with Anwar have been so helpful. The topic of the language landscape in Pakistan that Anwar just discussed, I think all of you will be able to draw lots of parallels between that in terms of just how there are language elites or social elites and cultural elites that exist both in, as Anwar said, in Pakistan, but all of that concept can be sort of drawn parallels from India as well. And I really sort of like the whole concept of language just unifying a nation. In specific to India, I think each state has its own language. I think just that having like one or two some languages that become like a major lingua franca for the country becomes super important. So yeah, I think I'll let the video speak for itself, but I do want to just sort of talk a little bit about how an engineering student ended up and having that curiosity around the concept of languages, right? So I have always been interested in literature, and I ended up taking a linguistics course in my final year. So that in itself ignited my curiosity to sort of learn about languages in a social context and how it impacts society on the whole, and not just technical aspects of languages. So I think basically I would say that while just topics like linguistic aspects of colonialism are really complex topics, but they speak about how language of the colonizer or the ruler is favored over that of the colony, and how it can lead to a feeling of loss of identity and culture amongst the inhabitants of the colony. So I think in the Indian context, it would mean that languages such as Persian, which became a major language at the time of Mughal rule in India, following which India was colonized by England, and that led to a prominent status of English language in India. My personal interest into languages, I think, looking back, dates even back. When I was in school, we had this chapter in my English textbook called The Last Lesson. It was a fictional story of a boy living in a small district in France at the time of the Franco-Prussian War. The boy basically disliked studying and hated his French teacher. However, one day he realizes that as an outcome of the war, Germany has ordered that German language will replace French instruction in his school. And that is when that realization strikes him that he can no longer study his native language, and the loss of identity, right? So I think this story in itself left an lasting impact in me, and I think that is where just my curiosity about linguistics and the impact of language started. In our project, we have looked at the impact of telegraph linkage between England and India. We've also talked about the language landscape of India in itself and the relationship between English and the Indian languages. And I think it's basically, we've also discussed this evolving relationship between England and India. First, we are colonization, and now as independent nations. Given this background, I'll just let the video, see its way through.
Great, thank you for such great introductions. I'm so excited to share this film. So enjoy.
With a population of over 1.3 billion, India is a rich and diverse country, culturally, socially, and linguistically, a reflection of its history and past influences. This short film will take you through the realms of time when the telegraphy link was established between India and England, and discuss how English in India has evolved over time. It also encapsulates the language landscape of India and reflects on the relationship between English and the Indian languages. Although only around 10% of Indians speak English, that counts up to a massive 125 million English speakers, making it the second largest English-speaking population in the world. The status of English as one of the two official languages reflects its importance, especially in business and administration.
Porthcurno, June the 7th, 1870. A cable is brought ashore that would soon form part of the first submarine cable linking England and India, the jewel in the crown of the British Empire. Laid on the seabed, the route went from Porthcurno to Carcavelos, Gibraltar, Malta, Alexandria, Suez, Aden, and finally Bombay. The Indian Mutiny of 1857 had demonstrated the need for rapid communication with India via a network under England's control, as at that time it took a month to send a message from London to Bombay. In 1865, a step had been made with the first overland telecommunication link between Europe and India, but it was still uncertain and unreliable. With the new Red Sea Line of 1870, a message could arrive in mere minutes. In fact, at a party celebrating the opening of the cable, guests were invited to send messages to Bombay and see responses arrive within 15 minutes. At the telegraph station in Bombay, messages could be sent on to other parts of India using the overland telegraph system developed by Dr. William O'Shaughnessy, known as the father of electric telegraph in India. As India's link to Britain and the rest of the empire, Bombay was an important hub of communications and of vital importance for Britain. The telegraph station there also represented a mixing of East and West, with workers from different parts of the world. In the early days, telegraph operation engineers had to be trained in England before going to work in India, so there were many British workers, as well as other Europeans and local Indian workers. With its telegraph cables snaking out under the sea, Britain had pulled its colonies closer. Easier and faster means of communication enabled Britain to exercise greater control, politically, economically, but also linguistically. Like how the internet and mass media is aiding the diffusion of English today, the telegraph would have also impacted the spread of English in the 19th century. As the Marconi Map shows, English was the main language of telegraphy in many parts of the world, including India, and is likely to have been commonly used in telegraph stations like the one in Bombay, cementing its use in the civil service and in education. Although the telegraph network was by no means the only factor in the diffusion of English in India, leading to its status in 1947 as the only functional lingua franca in the country, it undoubtedly had an impact, as it meant that there was increased contact and communication between England and India. The intermingling of English and Indian workers at the telegraph stations would have also furthered the spread of English through the population. The diffusion of English even went as far as names, Accounts suggest that several Indian senders adopted common English names like Peter and John, as they believed that more attention was paid to the correct transmission of messages to Europeans. Inevitably, the prevalence of English in the telegraph industry and administration came at a cost for Indian languages, like Hindi, Bengali, and many others.
Though India became an independent nation on August 15, 1947, it declared itself a sovereign, democratic, and republic state with the adoption of the Constitution on January 26, 1950. The Indian Constitution envisaged that English would be phased out in favor of Hindi over a 15-year period, but gave Parliament the power to provide for the continued use of English even thereafter. Plans to make Hindi the sole official language of the Republic were met with resistance, given the plethora of languages used in various parts of the country. While there is no one Indian language, both Hindi and English are declared as the national official languages to be used for official written purposes throughout the country. Looking back, two contact languages have played a crucial role in the history of India: Persian and English. Persian was the court language during the Mughal period in India. It reigned as an administrative language for several centuries until the era of British colonization. Today, India is well known for its rich linguistic diversity, and rightly so. To put things into context, India is home to speakers of about 461 languages, of which 447 are actively used in daily communication. Amongst these, 121 languages have more than 10,000 speakers each, and 22 of these are officially recognized in the Indian Constitution. Almost every state in India has its own language. Maharashtra has Marathi, West Bengal Bengali, Punjabi is spoken in Punjab, and Kannada in Karnataka, and so on. These languages can further have multiple dialects and often have their own script. Being the mother tongue of approximately 43.6% citizens, Hindi serves as the lingua franca across much of North and Central India. However, fewer people speak and understand Hindi as you travel further south, which is dominated by the Dravidian languages. The language landscape in India, as you can see, is quite complex. Most people in India are multilingual or bilingual at the least. A child belonging to a Bengali family living in the state of Gujarat would converse in Bengali at home, speak the local language Gujarati with their neighbors and friends, and study Hindi and English at school. Hindi is derived from the family of Indo-Aryan languages that are all ultimately derived from Latin and Greek. Thus, English, Hindi, Bangla, Dutch, German, and French are all distant cousins. Contrary to English, where the pronunciation of certain words does not strictly follow the written form, Hindi is a phonetic language. Each word is pronounced according to its spelling. This makes the language easier to pronounce since it follows the written form all the time. As a continuously evolving language, English has borrowed many words from Indian languages, especially during the British colonization of India. For example, jungle, bandana, pajama are all adopted to English from Hindi. An interesting example is that of shampoo, which became a part of the English language in the 18th century. The word shampoo is derived from the Hindi word champo, which means to squeeze, knead, or massage. In Britain, the term and the concept was introduced by a Bengali trader who, along with his wife, opened a shampooing bath in Brighton in 1814. Similarly, the word bangle is derived from the Hindi word bangri, which originally meant colored glass ring ornaments worn on the wrist by Indian women. In India, English fluency is considered socially prestigious and important for job success and upward mobility. But Acquiring fluent English requires rich and consistent language exposure, which unfortunately is accessible to only upper middle and upper class families in India. Together, this desire to speak fluent English combined with the inaccessibility to do so leads to a hybrid language that combines words and sentences from both languages only for conversational purposes. Hinglish, as we call it, is an amalgamation of Hindi and English within a conversation or even individual sentences. For instance, a Hinglish speaker would say, पिछले कुछ सालों में the number of unicorns emerging in India has been on a rise, which translates to, in recent years, the number of unicorns emerging from India has been on a rise. At the same time, there are Indianisms, words or phrases which are characteristic of Indian English. These are at times grammatically incorrect literal translation from Hindi and widely used. What is your good name? Myself Raj are some common Indianisms. One Indianism, though, that actually makes logical sense is prepone, the opposite of postpone. Thus, from the lens of languages, the impact of English on Indian languages and vice versa has been enormous.
The relationship between India and England over the centuries has been a close one, and was clearly reinforced by the physical link of the telegraph cables and the communication that it allowed. Today, their relationship remains close, but more equal, now that they are both separate, independent nations. Instead of telegraph messages, the internet provides rapid communication between the two countries, and links are reinforced by trade deals, diplomatic missions, and migration. The rise of India as a powerful global economy and the world's largest democracy could, in the near future, even see it rival the power of its former oppressor.
Wow, thank you so much for an outstanding film and bringing together so many images. And it is so interesting to hear about the power of the English language and how Anwar's talks have inspired these ideas. So on that note, Anwar, would you like to ask a question to Hannah and Rutvi, please?
Yeah. There's lots to pick. Well, I mean, firstly, well done. It's really, to get that much complex information over in 10, 11 minutes as the film is, I mean, you had to filter and leave a lot out, yeah? And that's a really good skill, so well done. I'd be interested in, a question to you both. You know how Urdu there's a hierarchy in India with English and Urdu. Are you saying that's not quite the same in India because there's so many other, what's the relationship between Hindi and Punjabi in India? Equals or?
All right, so I can take that up. I come from a Punjabi family personally, and so we basically, I do not know any Punjabi at all. Right. I can understand the language, but I cannot speak it. My grandparents, their generation, when they speak with their friends or their parents, etc., that is when they actually use Punjabi. Mm-hmm. Most of even though I am a Punjabi, I don't speak the language, right? But then if you go further so now I currently live something further east to Delhi. So that is like central north of India. If you look at Punjab, that is where most of people who speak Punjabi would reside, right? So then the religion essentially would be Sikhs and not just Punjabi. That is the community who mostly speaks Punjabi. And then I think there's between the languages Hindi and Punjabi, there's no hierarchy as such. Of course, there are many more Hindi speakers than Punjabi speakers, but I think Punjabi, just as a form of, if you just look at the mass commercial movies that come out, or the complete content, the Punjabi songs are really popular in India. The Punjabi movies, or even the use of some Punjabi phrases in traditional Hindi movies, is also very common. So I think I particularly do not see any hierarchy as such, but I see like a really good intermingling of languages.
What about Urdu and Hindi? What's the relationship between Urdu and Hindi now?
All right. So I cannot speak for the Muslim population, of course. Personally, my experience has been that me and most of my friends who are interested in literature, that is when they actually really look up to Urdu, right? The Urdu poets, the Urdu just writers, that is when we actually go and sort of look at that literature in its entirety. And yeah, it's really considered, at least amongst us, my friends and all of our community, it's just considered like as a really good, rich language. Yeah, but then again, not accessible to everyone. Yeah, I mean, I personally have this huge inclination towards just the romanticism around Urdu literature, and that is where I come from. Yeah.
Hannah, one last question. Hannah, were you surprised at how powerful English is in India still?
Yeah, I think so. Almost, well, sort of in a contradictory way. I was surprised how powerful it was, despite how few people speak it. Does that make sense? So kind of its status in the country and its use among the elite and administration and government and things like that. But the fact that, as Rutvi said, only 10% of people in India speak it. So there's a clear kind of discrepancy and like divide there, I guess, which must...
10% of India is a lot, though.
Yeah, a lot of people, but like kind of proportionately. And I wonder if that leads to kind of class divisions and things like that.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much.